is Basic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
And then I could call up a certain sector on a track, and then wham, I'd knock a hole in the disc. There were shortcuts to try to get that to fit in 16K. Somebody was really hot because he has a straight flush that's higher than someone else's straight flush in the pot split. So he goes crazy and writes me a nastygram.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Monty Webb published one program through Atari Program Exchange, 7 Card Stud. The program first appeared in the summer 1982 APX catalog, where it won second prize in the entertainment category. He also self-published the game as Real Poker 1. His publishing company was called Real Software. Here's its entry in the APX catalog. 7 Card Stud, a user-programmable simulation by Monty Webb, recommended for ages 10 and up, written in BASIC. That big game is coming up, and you need to practice your poker skills. What strategies work against the new player in your group? How's your bluffing? Do you remember when to fold, hold, and raise? 7 Card Stud simulates 5 card-playing partners with 4 programmable characteristics. Using a joystick controller, you can change the player's characteristics. If you're new to 7 Card Stud, use the pre-programmed personalities, which are quite a challenge. If you're ready to sharpen your card techniques or create your own competition, you can choose one of the 3 traits in 4 different categories for each player. You can choose one of 3 traits in 4 different categories for each player. First, you decide if a player is hard, average, or easy to bluff. Next, you decide how often this player raises. Then you choose the degree of risk he'll take before he folds. Finally, you determine his overall playing strategy. Too loose, smart, or too tight. You answer these questions for each player. 7 Card Stud shuffles the cards and deals 2 down and 1 up to each player. The program finds the highest hand showing and starts the betting. According to the player's program characteristics, he will fold, call, or raise. The other players respond in turn. When it's your turn, you also choose to fold, call, or raise. The pot grows as you bet on each round. At the end of 7 cards, all hands still in the game turn face up. 7 Card Stud then determines the winner, and the announcement, "Who has the gold?" appears with a list of everyone's winnings. You can then go back and see everyone's cards for study. At the end of a game, you can play another hand against the same players, or you can restart the game and change the players' personalities. The author invites written questions and comments. Review comments. This game is not a beginning tutorial. The graphics are very good. Poker players are sure to enjoy this excellent simulation. The user manual is very good. Requires Atari Basic Language Cartridge, 1 Atari joystick controller. Order information. It was available on cassette, which required 24K of RAM and cost $15.95, or diskette, which required 32K of RAM, also cost $15.95. It was APX catalog number 20118. This interview took place on September 14th, 2016.
Only thing I had before I got my Atari was that terrible Odyssey program where you taped the piece of plastic to your TV screen.
Right.
And tried to ski down it. It was awful. What a disappointment.
All right. So
then we saw the Atari display once at some store, and we're just blown away with the graphics and things you could get on a computer. And we bought ourselves a little Atari 400 to start with.
Mm-hmm. Nice. With the cassette drive or floppy drive?
Cassette drive.
Yeah.
8 meg.
8K.
Memory.
8K of memory. Yeah.
Oh, 8K. Yeah, I wish
I know. Megs would come.
We saved a whole year.
Yeah.
To buy the upgrade to 16K.
Wow. Wow. So how were you using it? Were you programming right away? Were you just playing Pac-Man? How were you using it?
Initially just playing the games and things like that. But I had a TI calculator and had programmed moon landing and stuff like that, and all these neat games were coming out that we liked, and then we saw the Atari Exchange opening up, and I thought, well, as a program I always wanted to write. I was playing poker quite a bit, and I wanted to model some of the guys I was playing against to see if there was a better strategy that might beat them, because they weren't very good players, but being a better player didn't make so much difference with them. They're just so crazy. And I thought, I probably got to modify how I play. I wonder if I could program that. So off I started.
Interesting. So, so you had been a card player yourself for professionally, or just for fun with friends, or what?
Well, when you lose as much as you could lose, it was probably professional.
I see. Okay.
But it was a regular crew. We would hire a room at a hotel and play all night long.
Wow.
And then go to work the next day pretty tired.
I bet. So, I noticed when I played the game yesterday, and Stud is not my game. I played some draw and things, so I don't know all the ins and outs. But I noticed when you start the game, it asks all sorts of questions about how you want the other guys to play, real loose, or I don't remember all the terms, but there was all these setup rules. So was that in your efforts to play like the other players?
Right. Yeah. The first thing was, can I actually model so that the computer mimics certain characters, and that turned out to be pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. Well, straightforward with a lot of work on how do you define a player that is loose and how do you define a player that's tight. But after a while, I got to where they would play fairly accurately compared to what the humans were doing. And that was basically, I don't know of a game that came out before that allowed you to program the personalities of a player. This was years before any of the skill games had the ability to modify how players reacted to you.
Do you think in the end it made you a better player?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, after about 3 months of playing with it, I developed a very loose strategy, radically different than how I normally play, that it showed that it would make the most money against other loose players. And I did quite well after that.
Excellent. So, aside from the actual gambling aspect of it, did this program make you any money through Atari Program Exchange?
It really did. It was a lot of fun. It ran for a long time, and I got my royalty checks, and that was pretty exciting. And the biggest thing was the tons of equipment I was able to get from winning a prize in the first place, because then I could go to a disk drive instead of trying to program this on a tape recorder. And at the time, I bumping up against the 8K and the 16K limit with a tape program to have card shuffle, automation, and all that was really pushing the limits. So even though it was written in Atari Basic, a lot of the animation was a straight line 6502 assembly that my 8-year-old was helping me with.
Wow.
He had such a memory, so he knew all the memory locations of all the important things I needed. So I'd just be hacking away, and I'd say, where's the whatever, and he knew the memory location in hex, and that'd help me.
Nice. Save you time from looking it up in the reference book.
Yeah.
Nice. So you won second prize in the summer 1982 catalog.
Yeah.
So that was probably $500 worth of equipment. So you got a floppy drive, and did you ever upgrade to an 800, or were you always stuck with that 400 keyboard?
No. I bought an 800 right away, got me a printer, and later on got another disk drive and hard drives and everything, and had a ball. And I was working on another program for Atari.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I became friends with a couple of the guys, and they gave me some of the Atari 4th that was used in making Battlezone.
Sure, yeah.
And I was using that to try to do a game I had in my mind that would have really been good. And it was so difficult. And then one day, I saw the game I had in my mind already hit the shelves, and it was beautiful and 10 times better than anything I could have come up with.
And what was the game?
It was Ace of Aces was the game I was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
A 3D battle, and Sid Meier came out with a version that was just perfect.
Right, a flight simulator, flying battle simulation.
Right, yeah. And I said, oh, I'm a one-hit wonder, and that's the way it's going to be, because the ideas I have are so hard to do. It takes a full-time programmer to do it, and I was running a semiconductor company at the time, so it was really part-time work.
So I was wondering about the names of the predefined names that you play against. There's Eddie and Monty, and I don't remember the rest. But were these named after real people, or pulled out?
Yeah, they really were.
Yeah,
Doc was a plastic surgeon who had tons of money, and that's why we like to invite him to the games.
Uh-huh.
One of the guys was the typical salesman, all bluff, bravo, and lots of money, and so he was fun to have at the games. Eddie, well, I can't say that. He was an unbelievably not clever person who most people would look at and think he's one of the smartest people they'd ever seen, but he couldn't play poker. So that was what left him. And some of the other guys were good players.
Uh-huh.
Wouldn't make mistakes. You want a couple steady guys that you have to grind to get their money. You can't just take it away from them, you know.
Mm-hmm. There's Kelly and Steve.
Yeah. Kelly was a good player. Steve was my boss, but he played poker too. He was a good player.
Did you tell these guys that they were virtual versions of them?
A few of them. The ones that I worked with and had played with for the longest time, I did, and they thought they got chuckles out of it. They laughed. They thought that was great.
Nice, cool. So you did this, and you started on your Ace of Aces game. Any other Atari projects or things that you did back then?
Well, from what I picked up on the 4th, I learned 4th and ended up writing code for my workplace in 4th. And for years and years, we had offshore sites running maybe 200 6502 machines with 4th, doing final on semiconductors.
Wow.
And then I learned C. I learned a few other programming languages to keep up, but during that period of time, Excel came along and then got better and better, and most of the engineering could be done with Excel, and I sort of got out of doing a lot of other programming.
Mm-hmm. I found a version, or maybe a different game, or version of this game called Real Poker 1 by Real Software.
That's me.
Oh, that's you. Excellent.
I put that out myself, yeah.
Kind of self-publishing it. How did that do?
Not as much as the Atari one. I sold a few. I had a poor man's copy protect.
And what does that mean?
Well, I had read where the most unbreakable copy protect was a laser hole at a certain sector.
Mm-hmm.
And so you couldn't, any copy you made is not going to have a hole in that sector.
Sure.
Reading it, you can tell, right? So on my system, I took one of the floppy drives and modified the head with a pin.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could call up a certain sector on a track, and so it would center, and then wham, I'd knock a hole in the disc.
Wow.
And they went out, and it worked just fine for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
Then, to my horror, that hole wasn't a clean hole, okay? Even though a pin had gone through it, over time it could flatten out, and enough of the disc could come back alive that the program would read that there's not a hole there anymore.
Huh.
And they wouldn't run. And guys are saying, what's the matter with this thing? It won't run. I'd get it back, and I'd look at it, and I said, well, there's still a hole there, but there wasn't as big a hole as there was before. And I go, well, that's an aggravation.
Huh. Like the plastic sealed up or something over time, perhaps?
Because it had kind of pushed away. It hadn't really blown a hole through it, like a laser would do.
Huh.
But one of the weird things that happened with the poker program was there were shortcuts to try to get that to fit in 16K. And one time, and one of the interesting things is you have to answer all the mail, the complaints, and things like that. And somebody was really hot because he has a straight flush that's higher than someone else's straight flush, and the pot split. So he goes crazy and writes me a nastygram, and I said, well, yeah, look at the odds of that. Why should I waste a few bytes to go after that? But nope, I had to go redo the program so that a higher straight flush would win, even though that rarely happens.
So please go ahead.
The next weird thing is Atari, I didn't even know they were going to release it in Europe. And they release it over there, and it won't run very well. And they said, is there anything in your code that's not going to be so good on European? And instantly I go, well, all my assembly code that takes place during the line refresh, that's the only time you can do some of the programming. Mm-hmm. There are different times between the European and the U.S. I says, I'll have to rewrite all the animation to make it work. And they says, oh, good. Can you have that done in a week? Well, it took me more than a week, but I had to rewrite it so it would work on a system I'd never seen before, and nor did I have a way to test it. We just had to make samples, send them over there, and then somebody say, yeah, that looks okay,
Wow. Wowza. So do you have a sense of how many sold? I mean, was it 1,000?
Oh,
was it
I
10,000?
can't even remember now, but it went for years and years. I would still get royalty checks, and I'd still get comments from people that enjoyed playing it.
Nice. Yeah, tell me some more about letters or calls you got from people.
Oh, let me think. A few people would say, I know who Eddie is. He lives down the block. That's exactly how he plays. or something derogatory like that.
Yeah.
And I'd get a kick out of it because in most cowboy movies, they never show how actually terrible most people play poker. Everybody's really tight, and the showdown has two high hands when most of the cards playing is everyone's trying to read everybody and bluffing,
Mm-hmm.
So, and nowadays you look at Las Vegas where they're playing Texas Hold'em, and the amount of bluffing is dramatically higher than what old poker players would ever do. because of the nature of that game, if you play too tight, you get taken out by the blind. So
right. Do you still play poker?
No, I haven't played in years. You gave that up when I had to work a lot harder to keep my company going. But I'd still do a lot of programming.
Oh, yeah? What do you program now?
I do financial analysis, and I help people. I'm retired, but I help about 3 or 4 different people do Excel problems when they can't find any other fix. And I do a lot of programming in specific languages that run stock analysis, and I write my own stock programs. So I've always kept busy. And both my sons are in computers.
Mm-hmm.
The one that had the good memory is in a company doing websites, and the other one is in charge of the network security for a very large company worldwide. So they're very successful in it, and we have a good time talking all the time. And they won't help me when I have a problem. They say, "Dad, it's good for you to learn how to do Java." I go, "It's not good for me."
I don't think Java's good for anybody, but okay.
But I had to learn Java because the financial program I had, the guy that wrote it died, and it won't run on Windows 10. And so I had to learn enough Java to go in there and hack it and get it to work again.
Wow. It all started with Atari Basic.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, do you still have a copy of 7 Card Stud? Because we don't have, the internet doesn't have a copy of the manual or the cassette version.
Oh, boy. I doubt it, but I'll have to ask my wife to dig through everything and see if we can find it. There's a chance, but a slim chance. But we have so much junk around here, I may have even thrown my old 800 away, and that would have had the documentation with it.
There's a chance you still have your 800. That makes me a little happy. Nice. What haven't I asked you about those times that I should have?
I don't know that there were many people could imagine how radically different the future was actually going to be. And what we all thought was just jaw-dropping cool looks just so antiquated nowadays. You know?
Yeah.
Now, some of the other guys that were prize winners went on to be stellar programmers over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them ended up working for Atari and then going into Pixel, and then ended up in charge of the security programming for PayPal.
Yeah,
and that was the #1 winner.
I've interviewed a lot of people, and it's amazing the just variety. I mean, some of them aren't in computers at all, and they're in real estate or whatever, and some stayed it their whole life and attribute, a lot of that to the Atari. One
of the weird things that doesn't come out very often, but a lot of the good programmers also were musicians. Play some instrument to enough of a level you could have made a living at it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And somehow the programming and writing music or understanding music seems to connect with a lot of people.
Interesting. Were you a musician?
I was until I got out of college. But I put myself through college playing rock and roll, jazz, Mexican weddings, whatever,
Nice. Very cool. If you could send a message to the Atari 8-bit community that still exists, what would you tell them?
Oh, those were the good old days. Those were the good old days, weren't they? I don't know that... I guess kids today get just as excited, but I doubt it. It seems like they spend so much of their time with their face in a screen with everything blasting away. I just can't see them getting excited about the next game as much as we used to when a new game would come out. Particularly the arcade games that were always going to be better, right? You know?
Yeah. I think I have what I need. Thank you so much, Monty.
All right. Catch you later.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.